Welcome to today's live conversation. I'm joined here with Joe Frankie. Welcome here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Caleb. It's a pleasure to be here.
Joe, tell us about who you are and what you're about.
I'm happy to do so. What I do now is I help people if they know where they want to go and they can define that and they know where they are, and almost all people know where they are. But if we can define those 2 points, I help them build a LinkedIn bridge to get from where they are to where they want to go.
No, that's awesome. So who's the people that you help? What type of people?
Well, I'd say the bulk of the people are 40 plus year olds trying to figure out what's next. The youngest person I have helped was 15 years old, and they were working on trying to get into an extremely private selective high school. And the oldest person I've worked with was 84, and they wanted to get back in the workforce.
Awesome. So it's people who have a goal in mind of where they're trying to achieve. And you're helping them bridge that gap.
Right, because what happens is a lot of people, you're in a job, you may not like the job, you want something else. Um, you might be out of a job and you're trying to re-enter the market. You want to change sectors. You may want to pivot. A lot of people just want to get promoted and they're not seen for what they bring to the table. And then there are entrepreneurs that are trying to, advocate their entrepreneurship more so while they're still in their day corporate jobs, and trying to basically market that out there and get a leg up.
Hmm. Got it. Well, that sounds great. The So many people are in those stages, and I'm sure that you've had lots of interesting conversations. Um, the person that's looking for a job change, what tell me a little bit more about like what's going on with that. Is it primarily that they want more income, or is there more to it than that?
You know, uh, People come in all categories. you you name a category, and over the last 713 people I've assisted, it's kind of all over the map. But say somebody's not happy where they're at, and they want change. Well, you've got to be seen for what you bring to the table. In other words, uh, if you want another opportunity, then you have to show that you're a leader that can solve problems. Because I've never had anybody come to me when I was in the executive search business and say, "Hey, Joe, can you please find me a chief financial officer?" No, they come and say, "Joe, we got a problem. We need a chief financial officer that does this, 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 and has this suite of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so consequently, if you want those opportunities, like the one I just described, then you have to be a storyteller that you solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I say, anybody in the search business, they're looking for the 6 or 7 things, specific thing the client wants. So what is important is that you have those stories, or your ability to convey that you've been there, done that, have the merit badges, and that's articulated on your LinkedIn profile. Because the most frequent thing I get say, "Well, Joe, all you have to do is get me in front of somebody."
Mm-hmm.
And that might have been true 10 or 15 years ago, but as LinkedIn has come into its prime,
Mm-hmm.
everybody expects you to be able to articulate what you bring to the table fully and specifically in your LinkedIn profile. If
Mm-hmm.
not, you don't come up in the search.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't
Mm-hmm.
come up in the search, you're not seen. If you're not seen seriously, you don't get a message or a call.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the world has changed in a lot of ways. So typically, if somebody comes and wants a job and they show up, are employers typing into the Google search bar to see where this person shows up?
Well, I mean, if you go to the LinkedIn search bar,
Yeah.
which is what I do when I'm doing executive recruiting, and take that position specification or job description
Yeah.
and narrow down what I think the 10 most important keywords are.
Yeah.
And I put all of those up in there in the search bar, and I get the first 400 people that come up.
Yeah.
And then I'll vary those words and run that again. And then what I'm looking at is who's coming up in the top 40 of each of these searches.
Mm.
And there'll be certain people that come up in the top 40. Well, those are the people I need to look at seriously. So they go in a pile for a further in-depth, look. But
Mm-hmm.
let's face it, if you come up 395 out of 400, I'm never going to see you.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the rest of the world isn't either.
Yeah. Well, there seems like there's got to be a part aspect here of marketing yourself. So if I'm looking for a position and I want to have myself show up, I need to market myself, right? And so
Right.
it's not, and so in that, explain how that part works. If you're going to work with somebody, how can you help them to define how they can market themselves in as few words as possible, so it shows up good on the LinkedIn profile?
You have to be willing to use qualitative and quantitative metrics. So say, for example, I'm looking at Caleb. Caleb says, look, I'm an outstanding, podcast interviewer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, okay. So is that and 20,000 other people.
Yep.
But say I am a very specific interviewer. I've conducted 76 interviews in the last year in these particular spaces or genres, that have netted these kind of results, looks, views, impressions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we have defined you as somebody that can measure your production.
Mm.
And that one of the things I look for when I'm looking for people, and one of the things I constantly coach on, if you cannot measure your production, nobody's going to take you seriously. For example, when I open up a LinkedIn profile, you're probably going to get 12 seconds to earn my ability to take a deeper dive in you if I'm looking for you for a particular opportunity. So what happens first is I see the background picture. So in Caleb's case, I see a microphone, interviews, several different settings. One's a podcast, one's live, all that kind of stuff. So I say, okay, well, I mean, this guy, this is his prime directive. This is what he's doing.
Yeah.
So then I look at his profile picture. If I'm considering him for a interview for a position, is he attired in the way that he would show up at that interview?
Mm.
Because what is happening is your LinkedIn profile is your virtual interview.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on what you want. If you were a software engineer, working for Google, Microsoft, LinkedIn, Apple, maybe the t-shirt's probably the way to do it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it really depends on the aspect. What I do is I market myself as a senior executive. So I'm showing up here in a white shirt, power tie, and that's how, I want to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the type of people, I help.
Yep.
And so hope that frames it for you. So your profile picture and then your headline,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have podcasts. Do you have hosts? Do you have all the things that you want to be found for and who you are?
Mm-hmm.
Because those three things on the opening part really tell me a lot. Then I go down to your about section
Mm-hmm.
of your profile. And the first three sentences there tells me that you can measure your production.
Mm,
I'm a world-class podcast host. I'm a world-class interviewer by doing 76 interviews. I have these kind of, I've gotten 2 specialty awards and, what have you. Okay. So you have convinced me that if I go into your profile, I'm going to find some really good stuff. You
mm.
just don't say, hey, I'm an outstanding guy. It's a good guy, and, I just do great things. Right. Uh, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem
Yep.
is when people are looking, they're discerning,
Yes.
and you
Yep.
can be discerned out very quickly.
Yep. Very, very short time frame for somebody to just click away from you and you'd be gone forever, you know?
Right. And you've hit the nail on the head, because if that person leaves, right, then they're probably not coming back. And
Yeah.
so your mission in life is to provide all the answers that that particular person is looking for. Because if you want something, it's kind of like fishing, right?
Hmm.
You and I can go out and fish with baloney and catch a bunch of trash fish that we can't eat, right? But if we go out and say we're trying to fish for trout, then what we would do is put the bait out there that the trout likes, because then we're going to have a better opportunity at trying to catch that trout. So a LinkedIn profile is about engineering the bait for the person that you want to catch you. That is, call you and say, hey, Caleb, I saw your stuff on LinkedIn. I went through it. You've done this and this, and we've got this problem. Can you do this? Can you do that?
Yep.
So what it's important is it starts a conversation, and a conversation may lead to a relationship and further things. But one thing's for sure: if there's no call or no LinkedIn message, it's not working for you.
Yeah. Long and the short of it, right?
Yeah.
It's nobody else's fault.
Hey, you're your own best friend and your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
You
I
have
lo-
to decide what that's going to be.
I like how you said show that you can measure your results or your production.
Right.
I like that. That's actually that seems very clear when you say it that way.
Yeah. In fact, one of the positions I had in the past, I thought one of the best sentences that said that is, you know, looked at various electrical contracts, for our institution, and um, uh, looked at 14 different contractors, analyzed and bundled 3 properties together to save $880,000 in the first year
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
on electricity.
Yeah.
And it was a team of people that did that. I led the team, but the point is it shows. It doesn't say, "Hey, I can negotiate stuff."
Yeah.
Okay, it would think of it in the old way. We would have coffee, and I would say, "Caleb, how did you do that?"
Mm.
But in today's virtual world, you got to tell me that you did that. If not, I'm going to the next guy that's happened. And so, a lot of people cringe when I say this, but I think, HR departments and recruiters are the laziest people on the planet. And, hey, I'm there, you know, but if you don't take yourself, get yourself all prettied up, get your home, your hair combed and all of that stuff together, put yourself in a beautiful box, wrap yourself up, in the prettiest paper, get the best ribbon and tie it up, because you got to do everybody's work for them. And really, if you have done your LinkedIn profile in such a way that you answer, all the potential questions, you've really conducted a virtual interview through a LinkedIn uh, profile.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's one-stop shopping,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know. So a lot of times when I get opportunities for consulting. I get an opportunities to work on projects. I've coached clients in 14 different countries and I've never advertised.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is they find me, and they
Mm-hmm.
find me because they do searches trying to find somebody that can fulfill their need.
Yeah.
And that engenders a conversation, which, sometimes I'm not the right person to help them. And I say, Caleb probably can help you with that because he's a first class interviewer. Because I'm a podcast guest, but I'm not a podcast producer.
Yeah. 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 So help me out here. Somebody that is all over the place. They want to show up. They want to get a good job. They want to grow in life, but they're all over the place. They don't know how to zero in on what they could articulate as being their production or their value to somebody.
I've run
Help me
across
out
that.
with that. Trying to get somebody narrowed into a clear space.
I ran across that. In fact, I am your prime example.
Me too.
Okay. I'm your prime example because I was all over the space because I spent 4 years at the academy and 30 years on active duty in the military. And so you've got all of these experiences. And when I got out in the private sector, everybody wants to put you in a very specific vertical, or specific space. So I had aviation experience, software integration experience, startup, activating units, fielding new weapon systems, all of that kind of stuff. And when I first got out in the private sector, people say, well, what'd you do? And that was before LinkedIn. And so I had a very rough time of articulating, what I did. And then when LinkedIn came about and just continued to do that, what happens is you can take all of your experiential sets and your contributions in those areas because LinkedIn gives you a full range of capabilities to populate that.
Mm-hmm.
And then what that has done for me is people find me and say, "Hey, Joe, I've had two CEOs contact me and said, I said, hey, how'd you find me? And they said, well, Joe, you're a blood donor." And I said, what's that got to do with anything? And they said, well, I have a child that requires frequent blood donations, and I've decided that, if I can do business with blood donors, I will. And so in one case, we did business. The other case, I just wasn't the right fit. But, I was called.
Yeah.
I was inquired, and that was in my volunteer section.
Yeah.
And so what I've learned is LinkedIn I look at it like the Wall Street Journal. You have above the fold on the front page. There's a lot of stuff there. You have below the fold. You have the rest of the LinkedIn journal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most people only use LinkedIn like above the fold.
Mm.
You just, hey, here's where I work. This is kind of what I do and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, LinkedIn has pages, 2 through 12.
Mm-hmm.
It has an op-ed section. It's got a finance section. It's got all these other sections.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can populate things, for example, your organizations, the contributions you make, your volunteer activities.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn is like an oil portrait.
Mm.
Okay. You can mix up some pigment, come out. I could add a couple more hairs over here.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at a resume is a black and white photograph.
Yeah.
And it basically relates your intellectual ability. But a LinkedIn profile sells your emotional intelligence as well as your intellectual intelligence.
Yeah.
And, there's all kinds of places to populate stuff if you choose to do so.
Yeah.
And so what I've chosen to do is populate those areas, and I have benefited from it. In fact, until I wrote the book, I never had a website, and it was a
Mm.
condition of the publisher that I had to have a website. Other than that, LinkedIn profile is mainly what I've used to bring me business. And basically, if you want to know anything about me and my background, or if I've got experience in it, it's laid out there.
Yeah, well, I'd like to dive into that part of it there, how people will actually reach out to you. But I don't want to lose this part of the book. I want to talk about your book a little bit, and maybe we can get
Okay.
back to where we just were. The 5 minute drill. What's
Yeah.
what's going on with the 5 minute drill? Why did you write it? What's going on there?
I, with a lot of executives, I was a proponent. I've been on LinkedIn for 19 years. And so I've advocated it to executives and coached them over the years. And most of them said, Joe, I don't have time for that stuff. I don't have time for this social media stuff.
Yeah.
And said, and I said, well, okay. And so then I thought, well, how do I cross that bridge with them? And so what we developed was a 5 minute drill. So I say, as an executive, and you're head of a company or something like that, you got to be present.
Mm-hmm.
You got to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't want to spend a lot of time there. So we came up with a 5 minute drill of what they needed to do. And the book is co-written with a very good friend and another thought leader on LinkedIn, Lori Ruff. And we co-wrote the book together. And so you've kind of got you've got the military engineer kind of guy from me,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got kind of a woman executive approach from Lori. And I think the book speaks well and does well in that book. But in the first, by the time you get to page 5, we've already given you the checklist of what you needed to do. But here's, if you take 5 minutes, follow this checklist, you're in and out, you've been on the system, you're seen, you're out. Now, if you want to do it more, or the 5 minute drill more than once a day, hey, that's fine. But the
Yeah.
goal was, hey, how do we provide a methodology for the executive that doesn't want to spend a lot of time here, where they can show that they've been out here and do this. Now, the bigger companies, they have social media people that really do this for that. But for the other 85%, that are not in the big companies, you kind of end up having to do this yourself a
Mm.
little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's cool. Like that, I think that's a really good idea to be able to. I'm sure it's been successful. People have been able to implement your strategies.
Yeah, the book is a 1 hour read, and it's even being used in high school business classes.
Yeah, I love it.
Mainly because I think it's a 1 hour read.
Yeah, but hey, that's great. Like being able to cut back and just give the meat, actionable
Well, I
steps.
mean, there's 73 pages of stuff on the cutting room floor, and the hardest thing I've ever done in my life is write a 1 hour book.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. Um, okay, so we gotta. I want to grab that book. That's definitely one thing I want to do because I want to read that book.
It's a 4.9 out of 5.0 on Amazon. It's doing well.
Awesome, awesome. How long ago did you write the book?
We published it just in time to come out for COVID, so that all our book speaking tours and all of that kind of stuff got canceled.
Oh, sorry
So
about that.
we had to learn how to virtually market the book.
Okay, so do you have an update coming anytime soon?
We're thinking about that, but not yet. The most frequent comment I get, my next challenge is to get this book in an Audible format.
Oh yes, yep, yep. Yeah, actually, that'd be cool. I really enjoy that, to be able to listen to the audio and read at the same time. Yeah, it helps to get it centered in the brain a little bit better, concreted in.
Yep. I've had more people say, hey, I really like it when you get it audio. So
Yeah, awesome.
it's on the to-do list.
Well, we'll look forward to that for sure. So I want to talk a bit more about, you mentioned before we got into this book, you mentioned a part about how people reach out to you and how now you have a website and your publishing company help you do that. Do you market yourself in any way, shape, or form for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm present on Twitter. I have a Facebook business
Hmm.
side, and but really, I get contacted mainly via LinkedIn, as you might expect,
Yep.
and and even the people that want me to do consulting and projects, and that just goes to another point of LinkedIn. I've taken, I think 60 or 70 projects, that I've performed over time. Some go
Hmm.
back as far back as high school,
Hmm.
and articulated, populated that. And so somebody will call me and say, "Hey, Joe, I mean, I've took a deep dive in your profile. I've got this big problem, and I've read your project on helping rescue a Russian submarine,
Hmm.
and that sounds really like an unstructured project."
Hmm.
And trying to rescue a Russian submarine and make policy at the same time is was interesting
Yeah.
at best. And so I'll get a lot of frequent calls on that. That engenders a conversation. Somebody articulates a problem.
Yep.
I can either help them or refer them.
Hmm.
And so when I could help them, then we come to terms on how we're going to do it and proceed.
No, that sounds great. Um, it seems like that when somebody is they're in the search mode looking for an answer, right? You're helping people position themselves to where they're going to be found.
Yeah. In other words, you're in a noun and verb war with your peers.
Yeah, okay.
You're in a noun and verb war with your peers. The more nouns and verbs that you have on LinkedIn, I mean, and a noun and verb is the basic element of a sentence, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So the more sentences you have, which is storytelling, because now
yeah,
we get into paragraphs, the more paragraphs you have that say how you solve problems, because nobody hires somebody to fill a position.
yep.
People hire people to solve their problems. And so
Hmm.
you have to articulate that you solve problems. And the way you articulate that is you say that you can measure it. You don't say, "Hey, I'm really good. I can count money. I'm a CFO." "Hey, I'm a CFO with the, with contacts in the banking industry. 67 level senior contact." So that's a CFO you're looking for to grow a company.
Yep.
And the CFO you're looking for to save money is a completely different person and experience set
Hmm.
and specialist. And
Hmm.
they've got all of the stories about how they saved, cut, all of that kind of stuff to save these companies, from Chapter 11 or turn them around.
Hmm. Hmm. No, that makes perfect sense. I never. Yeah, that's an interesting term. A verb noun war. That seems
Yeah,
like
so
a
you're
good
in
use
you're in a
of approach.
content war, but what's
Yep.
the basic element of a content?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is the LinkedIn algorithm looking for? It's looking for nouns and verbs.
So it's so simple when you talk about it that way, but for some reason it's complicated if you don't think of it down those lines, right?
Yeah. So that's why on my headline, I say that I'm a storyteller, because really what I'm trying to do is get people to tell their stories in such a way, that they get seen for what they bring to the table.
Yep.
Most people are underrepresented, and I call it under merchandised,
Oh,
because yeah, if you can't sell yourself,
yeah.
nobody's going to buy you.
No, that's right. That's
And
right. Well,
so think of it this way: if you really do your LinkedIn profile to a high order, then every possible question that would come up in an interview is already answered on your LinkedIn profile.
wow. That's a golden nugget right there. That to me is like, that's powerful, to be able to think of your writing out your profile to answer those kind of questions.
Yeah. So when somebody takes the deep dive on you,
Yeah.
like for that person, he had to really go down in the bowels of the project to find the Russian submarine thing. So what that told me is he went through those projects and he scanned them and he found what he wanted. That engendered a conversation, which you know led to, hey, either us being, hey, having a good relationship, I refer him out, or hey, let's come to terms on how I can help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going through your LinkedIn profile here now, and I was just kind of scanning it. Do you mind if I read it out loud here?
Go go ahead. It's not going to hurt me.
I just want to just get for the context here. So we start off with CEO, board member, LinkedIn coach, speaker, and consultant, co-author, LinkedIn, The 5 Minute Drill, executive search, PM, LinkedIn strategist and storyteller, branding, advisor, mentor, confident, guest, podcast, TV, radio.
Right.
Yeah, I can see exactly what you're referring to. It's
Well, that's the headline. So that's really, if you want to be a board member on paid board positions, people want to know whether you've been a president or CEO. And so I've done my share of the volunteer board stuff. And so I'm more interested in the ones that either, remunerate you in stock or cash.
yeah.
And so that's my calling. So I get calls for people say, hey, Joe, I'm putting this board together. Do you want to do this? Are you interested in that? And so that's my bait.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then when you get further in depth the profile in each of my positions, I tried my best to say, okay, what did I do here? Not what was I responsible for?
Yeah.
What were our contributions? What did my team produce?
Yeah.
And that leads to a bullet sentence in the experience section,
Mm-hmm.
which means like, hey, we saved $880,000 on negotiating this electrical contract.
Yeah.
Then there's a project that explains in 2,000 characters how we did that electrical contract, who, what, when, where, why, and the metrics.
Yeah.
Okay. So that people can see, okay, well, this person's been at that level. He's done that, and I'm not wasting my time calling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In the olden times, 10, 15 years ago, somebody said they were really outstanding. You'd have a phone conversation and, you'd pull it out of them a little further.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
now in the modern world, nobody's got time to pull it out of you.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So you got to take care of yourself. You're your own best steward
Yeah.
of your future.
Yeah.
Nobody else is going to do it for you.
Mm. Yeah. So powerful. That right there is. So how much do you think, we're talking about LinkedIn, how much do you think connecting new connections and what I'm going to call cold outreach has into this? How does that come into play?
I think cold outreach, warm is better than cold
Mm-hmm.
in any situation. And so what I did years ago, I was working in Houston in 2005, and, we still had a son graduating from high school up in Dallas. So I was making that trip 5 days a week down to Houston working. So, I had the evenings. So I just said, okay, I am going to connect to 2 world-class people every evening. So I wouldn't go to bed until I'd worked. I'd done a little search. I said, well, okay, this person really looks interesting. Here's the things we have in common, and I would send out a, one of the LinkedIn invitation notes. It's got 300 characters there.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would list the reason why what we had in common and why it would benefit us to have a connection.
Mm-hmm.
So over time, if you advance that forward a number of years, what you find is those people were good people and they're all in positions of authority and they're on boards or they're high up executives.
Yeah.
So this is a perfect example of how you can kind of start early. And people will ask me, well, I need to have a bunch of connections. I said, look, if you had 26 total connections and they were all the quality of your best friend, you don't need any more connections.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really not a numbers game as opposed to a quality game.
Mm-hmm.
You have different views on
Yep.
that, but
Yep.
that's Joe Frankie's view. It's
Yeah.
all about the quality of your connection.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I'll get somebody will send me a connection request and I'll take a look at it and I'll always send them a note back, or, if it's not crazy,
Mm-hmm.
uh, send them a note back saying, hey, thanks for, sending me a request. How did you find me? What motivated you to reach out? Here's my calendar for a 15-minute phone call.
Mm.
That gets rid of 87.3% of people.
Do you just copy and paste that in, or do you type it out every time?
No, I have a Word document on one screen, and I personalize it for
Yeah.
them a little bit. But my point is, they've got a calendar, and they
Yeah.
can schedule a 15-minute phone conversation.
Yeah.
And if 87.3% don't want to have a conversation with me,
Yeah.
why in the world would I want to have a connection with them?
Come to think of it, that's how we got connected. That was literally the steps that you just
Yeah,
told me, right?
yeah.
So I passed the filter.
Well, I mean, and it's not a hard filter. I mean, you're a real live person. You're not a chat bot or a
Yeah.
socket puppet,
Yeah.
reaching out to me that's just a machine.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. I like that. So when you are connecting with people, like so when you help people, they're getting a profile together and they're connecting and they're reaching out to people, it all plays so well into that follow up because you're checking on them as though they were checking on you. It goes both ways, right?
Yeah, a lot of times when I'm coaching people, we have 3 hours together, and then they got a ton of homework.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like writing a term paper on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and when the people say, "Well, Joe, I'm going to do it this weekend," I said, "Well, remember when we were in college and we did the term paper the night before, where rough draft equals final draft.
Yeah.
We got a grade like that too." But when we followed actually all the steps, where
Yeah.
you do the outline, you have a structured way and you approach it that way, it turned out really good. And you were really proud of your what you produced.
Yeah.
And it's the same here. I always tell people, don't cheat yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it requires a different way of thinking. Okay. In fact, one of the first hours I go through is I got to teach you how to think in a different way so that you see the world in a different way.
Mm.
Because if you don't see the world in a different way, then you're going to be doing the same things that's not producing for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's actually one of the key points in growth for any one of us. The crux of that is I am where I am and I want to change. So you got to change something. So you got to change the way you're looking at things. You got to change the way you're doing things. Change your habits.
Well, and most people don't see themselves as underrepresented, because it's in their head. So they know they've done it. It's just, okay, imagine, you have this blank piece of paper and the only thing that somebody's going to know about you is what is on this piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't matter what's in your head because you basically got to get it on the piece of paper.
Yeah.
And today that's just basically getting it down. And, And I've a lot of times I can help people just by asking questions. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I call it, what, okay, that's the first differential of that equation. Okay. All right. How did you get to that point? That's the next differential of the
Mm-hmm.
question.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, who did you do it with? Okay. And you just keep going down, and they can tell you that story. It just doesn't come out that way in the beginning. And so there's you've got to get them. You got to help them get their subconscious working for them,
Mm.
because there's
Wow.
a lot in that subconscious.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's so helpful. So helpful. Like I can see being people benefiting that experience that they can go that you can take them through, because it's there. It's there. Like it's all within sight. Like here's what I think is funny. I can be anywheres, getting ready to wake up or having a morning coffee or having a shower, and I think of so many cool things that go on. And hey, I got pizzazz, and I can change the world, you know. But as soon as I'm confronted with the situation, a job interview, let's say, or trying to sell a product to somebody, and all of a sudden I'm face it, all of a sudden, or I'm getting ready to write out an email or write something out, and there's no words. Everything I thought about how I could do this, or it's gone, right? And it's like a dilemma. It's like something switches off. But when you're not under that pressure, and you got time and space to think about it, yeah, I can help people here, and I can do this, and I got value here, and I know I've got this. But also, when someone asks you, well, what have you done the last 5 years? It's just, I don't know.
Let me let me give you an example of how I've learned to do things. I was helping some people out. They were giving a presentation, and I was kind of acting as a consultant, kind of a mirror to give them back some stuff. And so uh, they came up into food service operations. And so I started making these comments, asking these questions, and, they were thinking about it, writing notes and all this other kind of stuff. And so I saw this guy go back over to a computer, and he came up and he said, Joe, I mean, you're talking about food service operations, but I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile and you don't have any food service operations. And then I thought about it and I said, oh my gosh, I don't. And the reason I didn't have it on the LinkedIn profile is because I grew up in a family restaurant. So my food service operations are, before high school and before.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I went back, I learned from that. I populated all those food service operations, what I learned with running the family restaurant business. When I
Yeah.
say running it, being the apprentice slave of the family.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand.
My dad says, you know, uh, hey, you're working for your room and board.
Free education.
Yeah. But anyway, over time, you know how a kitchen should be organized. You know what the cleanliness standards are. You know what the temperature of certain things need to be in certain coolers. You know what the water needs to be, for
Yeah.
washing dishes. I mean, water heaters, grease traps,
Yeah.
yeah, uh, air conditioning, and how to make coffee, all kinds of things, and how to do it in a sanitary manner.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I don't want to ever have anybody kind of question me again. So I went back and built an educational thing called the Frankie Family Apprenticeship Program. So it's before my high school years, and it takes into account food service operations, working in my aunt and uncle's service station, and working agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
raising racehorses and, you know, uh, doing farm work,
Mm-hmm.
not plowing, but stalk cutting and harvesting grain sorghum.
Yeah. I like that. So you have services that you do coaching? What else? What all do you? How do you help
So,
people?
so I have two companies, Joe Frankie Independent Consulting. That is what it is. People got a problem, and it doesn't really center around LinkedIn coaching or career development. And then JF3 Associates, JFII Associates does coaching, branding, mentoring to get people from where they are to where they want to go.
Yeah.
And I'm really not the one that does that. I just kind of show the pathway, and it's hard work on their part because I didn't grow up with them. I don't know what they've done, but I can tell that what they've done is not out there in such a way that it's going to get them what they want. And that was the best thing about being an executive recruiter, was learning how people need to show up, for me to, think about them seriously, and thinking about that. And that's part of the reason we engineered the book, is we saw so many people, kind of missing the point. And we knew that the book couldn't be long. The goal was, person got on an airplane in 1 hour, they've read the book, and they're ready to take action in some form on somewhere on their LinkedIn. And then the back of the book, it's got all the resources and links and all that to other stuff, to help people with.
Yeah. And speaking of that, what is the best way for somebody to reach out to you? How would you like to channel them to?
The best way to reach out to me is LinkedIn. I'm an open communicator, which means you don't have to send me an email, which you don't have to pay money in order to contact me. And so that's really the primary way, and that's where I'm at most of the time.
Yeah. Okay. So reach out to Joe Frankie the third. That's great. Well, and as you know, when you connect with Joe, you're going to have to accept that calendar invite and have a conversation with him. That's how you're going to get connected with Joe. And I think that's a great idea. If you're looking for help in these areas, it's worth it. Get on that calendar and have a chat here with Joe.
Everybody wants to know that you're not a chat bot or a robot. Because I don't converse with robots.
Well, Joe, thank you for your insights and sharing what you do. And I think there's been some valuable pieces of gold nuggets here that we can take and we can all learn from.
Caleb, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed our discussions and conversations, and you've done a great job on this being just kind of an interactive conversation.
Awesome. Well, I've loved it too. So this has been great.